Back in 1950, you could purchase an entire American home for roughly $7,400. And we're not talking about some cramped little box. You received an actual yard, genuine hardwood flooring, and people next door who greeted you by name. These days, that amount wouldn't even handle the initial payment on a second-hand storage unit in most metropolitan areas. By 1955, filling up your vehicle cost just 29 cents per gallon. $5 was enough to top off your tank, with plenty remaining for a cold drink and some chewing gum. And the service? You stayed in your seat while an attendant wiped down your windows and addressed you respectfully. The Chevrolet Bel Air arrived in '55 and commanded attention wherever it appeared. Dual-colored paint job, gleaming chrome details, powerful V8 motor under the hood. It looked ready to race even when parked. Having one wasn't merely about transportation. It was broadcasting to everyone that you were thriving. Back in 1952, Mr. Potato Head made history as the very first plaything ever marketed on television. Originally, children had to provide their own actual potato from the kitchen. The synthetic version appeared years later. Try handing today's child a raw vegetable and telling them, "Go ahead, have fun with this." In 1950, America's population barely exceeded 150 million people, roughly half our current numbers. Communities were more compact, streets had less traffic, and you could identify most people you encountered at the market. The country felt expansive, yet still manageable. Locking your doors wasn't standard practice during the 50s, not because criminal activity didn't happen, but because communities relied on mutual trust. When someone knocked, you welcomed them inside. If they didn't knock, it was likely a relative returning borrowed equipment. Worry simply wasn't part of the equation. Things operated differently. Sunday meals weren't suggested gatherings. The entire family appeared without question. Elderly relatives, younger cousins, that one uncle who repeated identical stories weekly. Beef roast, creamy potatoes, gelatin mold. Nobody particularly enjoyed, yet everyone accepted a portion anyway. Food wasn't the focus. Spending time together was everything. Drive-in cinemas reached their golden age throughout the 50s. You drove your vehicle in, attached the speaker to your window frame, and enjoyed 2 films beneath the night sky. With any fortune, the concession stand popcorn wasn't overcooked. And perhaps she reached for your hand. The TV dinner made its debut in 1953, packaged in an aluminum container, priced at 98 cents, and guaranteed a complete meal requiring 0 cleanup. Households embraced it enthusiastically, though nobody used the term processed food. During that era, it represented convenience and a touch of modernity. In 1954, retailers began offering the first color television sets. Though they carried hefty prices, approximately $1,000, equivalent to nearly $10,000 in current dollars. Most people continued watching black and white programming. And when somebody on your street finally acquired a color model, half the neighborhood gathered to witness it. The interstate highway network remained non-existent until Angel. President Eisenhower authorized it through legislation in 1956. Prior to that, cross-country journeys required serious commitment. You brought paper navigation charts, backup tires, and considerable tolerance. And should your automobile malfunction in some remote location, well, hopefully you packed provisions. Elvis Presley launched his debut recording, "That's All Right," in 1954. During those times, certain people considered his performance style inappropriate. Too much movement, insufficient reverence. But for younger generations, he represented pure electricity. He didn't simply perform songs. He transformed the entire nation, one record at a time. Milk arrived in glass containers on your doorstep, brought by the delivery person during early morning hours. You heard the distinctive clinking sound and understood the day was beginning. And if fortune smiled, Mother permitted you to remove the small paper seal before breakfast. Every child possessed a red radio flyer wagon, or desperately wanted one. It transported everything imaginable: playthings, animals, food supplies, younger siblings, whatever needed moving. And during rainfall, you inverted it and transformed it into a seafaring vessel, a fortress, or protective armor. Creativity was the sole enhancement required. The typical American household maintained one automobile, one television set, and one washroom. And yet, miraculously, everyone managed. Brothers and sisters battled over the channel selector. Well, the manual dial and alternating turns wasn't negotiable. It represented part of maturing. The average yearly earnings in 1950 hovered around $3,200, and surprisingly, that sum provided substantial value. You could purchase property, support a family, and still afford an annual getaway, even if it simply meant visiting grandmother's residence. School cafeteria meals during the 50s weren't pizza slices and sweetened milk. You received meatloaf, green peas, a helping of mashed potatoes, and a miniature milk container. And you consumed it without protest because the cafeteria woman appeared capable of lifting flour sacks for recreation. During the early 1950s, television antennas sprouted on housetops throughout the nation. Families climbed onto garage structures carrying wrenches and hopes, attempting to position them correctly. One adjustment too many, and you received interference. Positioned perfectly? Flawless reception of "I Love Lucy." When your mother required bread during the 1950s, she didn't consult an application. She dispatched you. Food markets were modest, local establishments, and everyone recognized your identity. You presented the shopkeeper a dollar bill, obtained a bread loaf, some dairy, and received coins back. In 1950, most television screens measured the dimensions of a serving plate and weighed comparable to a compact refrigerator. No wireless control, no pause function. Changing channels required standing up, and father invariably made you handle it. The original Waffle House establishment opened in 1955 in Georgia. It was compact, economical, and operated continuously. Long-distance drivers, adolescents, and morning risers all discovered a welcome spot at the counter. Your identity didn't matter. If you appreciated waffles and coffee, you belonged. In 1953, surgeons performed the first successful open-heart operation, utilizing a heart-lung apparatus. It sounded like material from imaginative fiction, halting the heart, repairing it, and restarting it again. But it functioned successfully, and it revolutionized what medical professionals believed achievable. House keys got shared with neighboring families heading out of town. You provided yours to the family next door, so they could provide for your pet. No security systems, no surveillance equipment, simply mutual faith. And perhaps a baked dessert waiting on the counter upon your return. Children during the 1950s played outdoors. No mobile devices, no electronic tablets, no wireless internet. Simply stick baseball, bicycles, and returning home when streetlights illuminated. You knew every youngster on your street, and somehow boredom never materialized. Coca-Cola still arrived in glass bottles, and the vending machines accepted only 5-cent coins. You slid the bottle from the refrigerated unit, removed the cap, and the initial taste practically stung. Cold, carbonated, flawless. No synthetic containers, no zero-calorie versions, simply the authentic product. During the 50s, your telephone was a rotary dial device mounted on the wall. If you mistakenly dialed the final digit, you started completely over. Long-distance communications were significant occasions. And if the neighbor intercepted on the shared line, well, privacy disappeared. You didn't require a fitness membership during the 1950s. Household tasks provided that. Cutting grass with a manual mower, splitting firewood for heating, hanging laundry outdoors, transporting water. That constituted your exercise. And somehow your grandfather still possessed superior leg muscles than you. During those times, you dressed formally to board aircraft. Gentlemen wore full suits, ladies wore gloves. Flying wasn't merely travel. It represented an occasion. You received actual meals, comfortable seating, and pleasant expressions from the cabin attendants. And nobody ever appeared in athletic wear or attempted to transport farm animals aboard. Back during the 50s, a gentleman's toolbox represented a symbol of capability. Heavy steel construction, no manufacturer labels, simply years of accumulated lubricant and expertise. You didn't discard possessions, you repaired them. And when your neighbor's grass cutter malfunctioned, you didn't contact professionals. You approached and assisted. Polio remained a genuine concern during the early 1950s. Children received instructions avoiding public swimming facilities during disease outbreaks. Then in '55, Jonas Salk's vaccination emerged, and it felt like the entire nation released a breath held for years. If your household possessed a station wagon, you lived comfortably. You packed into the rear area without safety restraints, windows lowered, canine drooling in the breeze, father shouting over the radio broadcast, and mother distributing sandwiches backward from a cooler container. It wasn't luxurious, but it represented freedom. The neighborhood barbershop served as the location where narratives were shared. Hair got trimmed, and confidential information was partially whispered beneath the buzzing of electric shears. You didn't require online reviews. You required Lou, the gentleman who'd been cutting your hair since Eisenhower's election, and still charged $2. GPS didn't exist. When you became lost, you stopped and requested directions, and someone genuinely helped you, typically using a writing instrument and a napkin. You trusted unfamiliar people, and somehow they didn't misdirect you deliberately for amusement. When the frozen treat truck rolled down the street, children didn't simply smile. They ran barefoot, quarters clutched in hands, screaming for bomb pops and drumsticks. Nobody concerned themselves with sugar quantities. Simply that initial bite, partially melted, sunshine on your face, and sticky fingers throughout the afternoon. During those times, high school workshop classes meant you genuinely learned practical skills. Welding techniques, woodworking, mechanical engines, valuable knowledge. You didn't simply graduate with a certificate. You departed knowing how to repair a grass cutter, construct a table, and patch a roof hole if necessary. In 1951, the first nuclear power facility went operational in Idaho. It didn't illuminate an entire city, simply 4 light bulbs. But it represented the spark of something enormous. America believed the future was atomic, and somehow it was simultaneously thrilling and frightening. Toasting devices, blending machines, waffle makers. During the 1950s, these weren't merely kitchen implements. They were gleaming symbols of advancement. Chrome, everything. Your appliances appeared as though they belonged in a spacecraft. And when something malfunctioned, Dad opened it and repaired it with a screwdriver and determination. During those times, children didn't wear protective helmets when riding bicycles. No elbow protection, no foam padding, simply scraped knees and decorative streamers on the handlebars. You crashed, you limped homeward, and your mother applied antiseptic like it was sacred liquid. And somehow you survived. Television broadcasting concluded at night. Around midnight, the screen would darken following the national anthem. No late-night programming, no promotional shows, simply static interference. That signaled your cue to retire. Or risk father awakening and yelling, "Shut that device off." During the 1950s, automobile keys were unnecessary. Many trucks didn't even possess door locks. You parked, left the keys beneath the sun visor, and nobody touched it. Today, you require a password to operate your microwave. During those times, trust exceeded technology. If you became ill during the 50s, you didn't search online. You contacted the family physician, and he genuinely visited your residence with a black medical bag, a thermometer, and an expression that communicated, "I've witnessed worse. and somehow his presence made you feel improved already. Penny candy genuinely cost 1 cent. Tootsie Rolls, Mary Janes, bubble gum, all arranged behind the counter in large glass containers. You presented 5 cents and departed like royalty. It wasn't simply the sugar. It was the excitement of selection. At home, the temperature control didn't change substantially. You wore an additional sweater during winter, opened a window during summer, and complained precisely once before Father said, "It builds character," and you believed him because you didn't want to be called weak in front of your siblings. Sunday morning radio broadcasts featured gospel music and news updates. No digital scrolling, no playlists, simply voices through the airwaves and the sound of bacon sizzling in the background. Dad read the newspaper, Mom prepared coffee, and the world felt unhurried in the most wonderful way. During the 1950s, most dairy products, butter, and meat originated from nearby agricultural operations. Food markets didn't require 20 brands of everything, simply one that functioned. And nobody questioned if something was organic. It was. That's simply how food was supposed to be. Cigarette advertisements appeared everywhere. On television, in magazines, even at the physician's office. Certain brands even claimed to benefit digestion. It sounds insane now, but during those times, lighting up was simply part of existence. Even your employer smoked at his desk. Children respected their educators, or at minimum feared their rulers. Discipline wasn't debatable. You stood when addressed, said, "Yes, ma'am," and you didn't talk back unless you wanted your ears boxed and a note sent home, which you absolutely didn't want. You didn't discard possessions, you repaired them. Radios received new tubes. Shoes received new soles. Toasters got rewired. There was pride in maintaining things operational, not because you were frugal, but because you possessed the ability. And when something finally broke permanently, you mourned it. A gentleman with a briefcase and a hat represented typical morning scenery. He kissed his wife farewell, caught the 8:15 train, and worked downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. And every evening he returned home like clockwork, exhausted but proud. The gelatin salad was in its prime. Lime jello with cottage cheese, fruit suspended in midair as though it defied gravity. Perhaps some shredded carrots added for texture. Nobody enjoyed it, but everyone consumed it because it was polite and well. It was simply tradition. When neighbors welcomed a baby, everyone appeared with a casserole and a used crib. No baby registries, no online wish lists, simply people assisting people. The new father was expected to distribute cigars, and the new mother didn't leave the residence for a week. Roller skates possessed metal wheels that sounded like thunder on the sidewalk. You tightened them with a skate key that hung on a string around your neck. And if your toe clip broke during the ride, you walked home barefoot with blood-stained socks and a big smile. Every diner possessed a jukebox, either at the table or by the entrance. Drop in a dime, select a number, and watch the gears work to life. Chuck Berry, Patsy Cline, or Buddy Holly came crackling through the speakers, and suddenly the entire booth was quiet. Paper delivery boys were genuine hustlers. Awake at dawn, carrying heavy canvas bags over one shoulder, tossing papers with terrifying accuracy. Rain or sunshine, no excuses. And if you wanted to earn money as a youngster during the 50s, you didn't stream content or sell candy bars. You delivered newspapers. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the first satellite ever dispatched into space. It was the dimensions of a beach ball and terrified America. Suddenly, the space race was underway, and children in the U.S. started hearing the word science substantially more at school. The average cinema ticket in 1950 cost merely 48 cents. For under $1, you received a seat, popcorn, and perhaps a cartoon before the film. You didn't pre-book. You didn't scroll through previews. You simply appeared and selected whatever was showing, and it was typically excellent. In 1953, DNA's double helix structure was discovered by Watson and Crick. Most people didn't comprehend what it signified at the time, but it would proceed to transform science, medicine, and even solve criminal cases decades later. During those times, it was simply a strange thing in a scientific journal. You could purchase a brand new Ford F-100 during the early 1950s for under $1,500. No touchscreens, no Bluetooth connectivity, simply steel, an AM radio, and a bench seat wide enough to accommodate 3 grown men and a dog. And if you damaged it, you repaired it yourself. The Korean War commenced in 1950 and continued until 1953. Over 1.7 million Americans served. It wasn't discussed as extensively as World War II, but it transformed thousands of families permanently. For many veterans, it was a brutal, cold, uphill fight, and one they rarely mentioned afterward. Most American residences didn't possess air conditioning during the 1950s. You cooled off with a fan, a cold glass of lemonade, and a nap on the porch. And if it became really hot, you slept in the basement. Nobody complained. It was simply part of summer. Marilyn Monroe wasn't simply a film star. She was the film star. In 1955, she founded her own production company, rare for a woman during that time. To some, she was a blonde bombshell. But behind the scenes, she was sharp, ambitious, and didn't follow Hollywood's rules. Most homes possessed one bathroom, and it was typically pink, mint green, or baby blue. The toilet, the bathtub, even the tile, all pastel. And if you had 3 children in one tub, bath night was a military operation. Oldest first, youngest last, same water. In 1958, the microchip was invented. At the time, nobody outside a laboratory cared much, but it laid the groundwork for computers, phones, and just about everything we use today. During those times, people were still more amazed by the automatic garage door. American Bandstand debuted nationally in 1957, hosted by a clean-cut gentleman named Clark. Teens danced in saddle shoes and poodle skirts while parents frowned from the kitchen. It wasn't simply a music program. It shaped what cool looked like across the entire country. If you wanted to cool off during the summer, you didn't head to a luxury fitness center. You went to the community pool if your town possessed one. Chlorine strong enough to bleach your hair. Lifeguards with zero patience. And somehow, every child still cannonballed right into the deep end. In 1958, the hula hoop hit shelves and sold 25 million units in 4 months. Children spun plastic rings in driveways, parks, and schoolyards until they were dizzy. Neighborhood contests appeared overnight, and parents secretly attempted it after dark, typically throwing out their backs with a smile. Homemade ice cream wasn't simply a treat. It was an event. You poured in rock salt, cranked that heavy metal handle until your arms gave out, and prayed it set right. And when it finally did, coldest, creamiest thing you ever tasted. Nothing from a store could touch it. Rock and roll didn't simply appear. It exploded. Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Elvis. They didn't sound like anything else on the radio. Parents panicked. Preachers warned against it. And teenagers, they cranked it louder. For the first time, music felt dangerous in a fun way. House calls from salesmen were common. Vacuums, encyclopedias, brushes, you name it. These gentlemen wore suits, smiled big, and gave live demonstrations in your living room. Sometimes Mom purchased something. Sometimes she didn't, but she always offered them coffee. It was simply the polite thing to do. In 1959, Hawaii became the 50th state. For many Americans, it felt exotic and far off. Beaches, volcanoes, hula skirts. Suddenly, postcards from paradise started showing up in mailboxes across the country. It was America's newest state, and everyone wanted to visit. Typewriters clacked away in every office, school, and home study. You messed up. You used whiteout or simply started over. And there was nothing quite like the sound of someone hitting return. That loud ding and slide that meant they were in the zone. On Halloween night, children didn't purchase costumes. They made them. Old bed sheets, cardboard robots, charcoal on the face for a cowboy beard. You walked from house to house with a pillowcase. No parents in sight, simply children, candy, and a night that felt like magic. During the 1950s, TVs didn't come with stands. They were the furniture. Big wooden cabinets with built-in legs and speaker cloth fronts. When it broke, Dad didn't throw it away. He called the repairman who'd show up with a toolbox and a cigarette. Men wore hats, not for fashion, because that's simply what you did. Fedoras, flat caps, even pork pies. You put it on before leaving the house, tipped it when you greeted someone, and took it off indoors. It was automatic. No one questioned it. Women curled their hair with metal rollers and dried it under giant helmet dryers that looked like something from a sci-fi movie. Salons smelled like hairspray, perm solution, and gossip. It wasn't simply about looks. It was a place to talk. In 1957, a little-known author named Dr. Seuss released The Cat in the Hat. It was written with only 236 different words to help children learn to read. It didn't simply become a hit. It turned story time into something fun, wild, and unforgettable. Postcards were a big deal. Every trip, even simply 2 towns over, meant grabbing a postcard and sending it back home. They cost a few cents and carried a simple message. Thinking of you. People saved them like souvenirs. Some still do. Bank hours were strict. If you didn't get there by 3:00 p.m. Friday, you were broke until Monday. No ATMs, no applications, simply a passbook, a teller behind glass. And the sound of that mechanical stamp punching your deposit into history. In 1955, Disneyland opened in California. Walt Disney himself walked the grounds on opening day. There were only 18 rides, and the park had major hiccups, including a plumber strike and melted asphalt. But still, it became the happiest place on earth. School desks had inkwells. Even though most children were already using ballpoint pens, the holes stayed anyway, like little fossils from the past. You poke your pencil through them during math and wonder how anyone ever wrote with an actual feather and ink. Church on Sunday wasn't a maybe. It was the anchor of the week. Families dressed up. Children sat still mostly. And after the service, everyone shook hands and headed home for roast chicken. It wasn't simply religion. It was routine. It held the week together. Encyclopedias were how you looked things up. A salesman would come to your door with a full set of Britannica, and your parents would pay in monthly installments. If you needed to write a school report, that big shelf of books was the internet. During the 50s, lunchboxes were metal and built to survive a schoolyard war. Roy Rogers, Hopalong Cassidy, or Howdy Doody on the side, and inside a bologna sandwich, an apple, and maybe a thermos of milk. No one traded their lunch unless it had Oreos. The first credit card as we know it, Diners Club, launched in 1950. It started as a way for businessmen to pay for meals without cash. By the end of the decade, more folks were signing up and forgetting to read the fine print. In 1951, the first coast-to-coast live television broadcast aired. President Truman spoke from the White House, and folks across the country watched it happen at the same time. It was the start of a new kind of connection. One screen, one nation, one moment. Yard games were everything. Horseshoes, jacks, marbles, jump rope, and lawn darts, the metal kind. The ones that could skewer a foot if you weren't careful. Children didn't need instructions. They made up the rules as they went and played till dark. Canned food was king. Spam, condensed soup, and canned fruit cocktail with one lonely cherry. Housewives stocked pantries like miniature fallout shelters. Quick, cheap, and shelf-stable. It wasn't gourmet, but it fed a family of 5 on one paycheck and a lot of casseroles. Bar soap was the default. Irish Spring, Lifebuoy, Dial came in cardboard boxes, smelled strong, and lasted forever. Every bathroom had a washcloth and a mystery drawer filled with half-melted pink and green soap chunks that stuck to the sink like glue. Brownie cameras became wildly popular thanks to Kodak. Anyone could afford one. Suddenly, memories weren't simply kept, they were captured. Birthdays, beach trips, backyard BBQs, all in grainy black and white. If your finger wasn't in the frame, it was a great photo. Every home had ashtrays, even if not everyone smoked. Glass, ceramic, sometimes built right into the furniture. Guests lit up at the dinner table, in the car, even in the doctor's waiting room. Nobody thought twice. Smoke simply came with the scenery. TV programs ended with a moral. Whether it was Lassie, the Lone Ranger, or Father Knows Best, there was always a clear lesson by the end. Be kind. Tell the truth. Don't climb into the well. Simple messages, but they stuck more than you'd think. If your parents purchased something on layaway, it meant you didn't take it home yet. You made payments little by little until it was paid in full. No credit, no interest, simply patience. And when you finally brought it home, it meant something. In 1951, direct dial long-distance phone calls became possible for the first time. No operator needed. Before that, if you wanted to call across the country, you had to ask a live person to connect you. With direct dial, suddenly coast to coast felt a little closer. Car interiors were metal, not plastic. If you left your Chevy in the sun, the steering wheel could fry an egg, and the seat springs left stripes on your legs. No cup holders, no airbags, simply raw steel, sticky vinyl, and a whole lot of attitude. In 1952, the first barcode patent was granted. It looked like a bullseye. Nobody had scanners yet, but the idea of machines reading products, pure science fiction. Took another 20 years to catch on, but it started with a doodle and a dream in a 50s lab. Most homes had one phone number, one corded phone, and zero privacy. If it rang, you ran for it. And if your teenage daughter stayed on the line too long, everyone knew. There was no voicemail. There was simply hoping they called back. Sidewalk chalk wasn't purchased in fancy packs. You made it with whatever white rock you could find. Driveways turned into racetracks, hopscotch grids, and masterpieces that washed away with the first summer rain. And nobody needed instructions. You simply drew. Every town had a local soda fountain or lunch counter. You sat on a red stool, ordered a cherry Coke or a grilled cheese, and spun in circles while the waitress yelled your name like she'd known you for years. Because she probably had.